Greetings my tacticians and welcome back to Tactical Knowledge. In my last video I talked about the first stage when it comes to building a team composition, specifically the difference between singles and doubles, and how a team's playstyle varies between the two. In this next video, I'll discuss the categories Pokemon generally fall under, and how a well-balanced team needs pieces of each to be effective. Once again, as with the previous video, what I say in this video is strictly my opinion. It may and probably will vary with what other, far more accomplished Pokemon trainers may say. Now then, after you've determined what kind of format you'll be battling in, singles or doubles, you will need to look at your various candidates for your team, and think about what categories these Pokemon fall under. Because despite how similar two may appear, they will each play very differently from one another. For example, two types of defensive Pokemon are Porygon 2 and Toxapex. With the Eviolite, Porygon 2's defenses match those of Toxapex, making them both ideal defensive Pokemon for enduring either physical or special attacks. However, Porygon 2's playstyle is different from Toxapex, as Toxapex wants to poison and damage with critical hits, whereas Porygon 2 wants to set up Trick Room and use its abilities to overpower you with special attacks. Now that you've had just a small example, we're going to look at the four various categories of Pokemon there are, and the two subcategories each one has, and how each Pokemon within them can fall under one of these two with training. The four categories are Offensive, Defensive, Support, and General. Starting off with the first category, Offensive Pokemon have two categories, Special Attack and Physical Attack Sweepers. Sweepers tend to have very high attack stats and speed stats, and tend to run more attacking moves than other Pokemon on the team. These sweepers have one job on the team, and that is to knock out as many Pokemon as they can before they themselves are knocked out. To compensate for their high speed and attack stats, they generally have weaker defenses and will easily be brought down with concentrated attack power, but they are dangerous because they hit hard and fast, often knocking Pokemon out in one shot, as is their task. To aid in their task, they equip items like Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, or Choice Band to increase their attack or speed by 50%, but lock themselves into the first move for as long as they remain on the field, or even a Focus Sash to compensate for their pitiful defenses. The second category, Defensive, consists of the two subcategories of Physical Defensive and Special Defensive Walls. The term walls is commonly used by competitive players to refer to Pokemon that specialize in walling or blocking one of two types of attacks, either physical or special attacks. Defensive Pokemon have very strong defensive stats, often sacrificing speed or attack power in exchange for their defenses. Because of their stats though, they can endure even the strongest of attacks, and can be swapped in without fear of being knocked out in one shot. Think of them as the opposite of sweepers. Sweepers want to KO opponents in one shot. Walls want to endure those heavy attacks sweepers use. To aid in this, they run items that make them withstand attacks, like Assault Vest to increase their special defenses, or restoration items like Leftovers to restore health steadily. Moving on to category number 3, Support Pokemon branch into two subcategories, Offensive Support and Defensive Support. Support Pokemon tend to not have very powerful stats in any one area, but what typically makes them strong is their ability and their moves they have access to. Offensive Support Pokemon want to use their moves to either weaken or hamper an opponent's strategy or their Pokemon by setting up status conditions, weakening attacks, or even suppressing abilities and moves. Defensive Support Pokemon prefer to use their moves to help their team by increasing their speed, strengthening their defenses, increasing their team's damage output, or even protecting them from status conditions, or even redirecting attacks away from their allies. The general fact about support Pokemon is they don't have many offensive or damaging attacks, but because of their abilities and movesets, support Pokemon can make the biggest difference on any team. To aid in their lack of offensive pressure, they typically have items like Focus Sash or an HP restoring berry to keep them in the fight. Moving on to the fourth and final category of Pokemon, General Pokemon includes nearly half of all Pokemon you will ever see. And unlike the other three I mentioned, general Pokemon include a broader number of subcategories when compared to the other three, but still contains factors the other three have. Before I mention these though, let me just make clear of one fact so you all know what I'm talking about. When I use the term general, I mean Pokemon that can be trained to be anything. I call them general because their stats make them capable of being anything without falling under any of the previous three categories. General Pokemon can be general offense, general defense, or general support. General offense Pokemon are Pokemon with high attack and speed stats, not high enough to be classified as sweepers, but high enough that they want to be used aggressively and given items like Life Orb to increase their damage output. General defense Pokemon are Pokemon that have relatively strong defense stats, and also have a strong attack stat or speed stat, making them ideal for enduring attacks and responding with a respectably powerful counterattack. These Pokemon tend to run items to keep them in the fight for as long as possible, items like leftovers or citrus berries to restore their health. General support Pokemon are unique. Not only are they capable of supporting their team, they also offer offensive pressure with their movesets. These Pokemon tend to rely on damaging moves that weaken the opponent in some way, like the move Snarl, which deals damage and weakens the special attack stat by one stage, and run similar items to their peer support counterpart Pokemon. Now comes the part of the video where I explain why a balanced team consists of Pokemon from at least 3 of the 4 categories and not just from 1. Because most offensive Pokemon, meaning sweepers, tend to have weak defense stats or lock themselves into a single move if they use one of the 3 choice items, you need a Pokemon that can be swapped into a move you know is coming from a Pokemon your sweeper is unable to knock out with a move they are locked into. For this, you need a defensive Pokemon, or a wall, with stats, abilities, or items designed to endure a specific type of attack, who can safely be swapped in without fear being knocked out in one shot. However, because these Pokemon often lack speed or attack power, they need Pokemon that can compensate and assist them in some way. In come the support Pokemon. Since these support Pokemon will lack the offensive pressure of their sweeper and wall counterparts, they need to do their task and set up or weaken the opponent before being knocked out, and have a partner on the team who can come in and take advantage of this. This is where the general Pokemon come into play, since they can easily be shaped into any strategy and compensate for any weaknesses the team has as a whole. Now you see why these 4 categories need each other, why they depend on each other, and why a balanced team consists of Pokemon from at least 3 of the 4 categories, or even all of them. You need a sweeper who can knock out multiple types of Pokemon in one shot, swiftly and reliably. You need a wall to endure those Pokemon who your sweeper can't finish off and reliably swap in to endure a dangerous attack without the fear of being knocked out. You need a support to help your Pokemon and set the field so you have as many advantages as you can get in a mostly luck-based competitive format. And finally, you need general Pokemon who can respond to any type of threat, reliably and with the tools that your other Pokemon don't have. Now, this concludes Stage 2 of how I prepare for any Pokemon battle when thinking competitively. In my next video, I'll discuss Stage 3, the roles each Pokemon on the team will play. I'll see you next time, Tacticians.